Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. My name is Jay, and today I want to talk about Disney's live-action Pinocchio. It's a remake of their 1940s classic. The original movie is held in high regard by many people. It has 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, and is often lauded for its animation. Unfortunately for Disney, this movie is not being received very well. It's currently at 29% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's been a while since we've talked about Disney live-action remakes on this channel, but we've never been fans, and Pinocchio didn't do anything to change that. I think this movie fails to capture the charm of the original. They more or less use the same design as the animation for Pinocchio. However, all the other CGI characters are more realistic, to the point where they're uncanny and kinda creepy. It makes Pinocchio look pretty out of place, and it makes it less convincing that people are actually interacting with him or that he's really there, like how he looks weightless when Geppetto picks him up. It also just looks kind of awkward in live action, like his painted-on eyes come off as kinda creepy, and parts that were cute in the original just come off as kind of weird here. I wish they'd gone for either a cartoony style for all the CGI characters or make Pinocchio more realistic. I think it would have been more successful than what we got. I also think they messed up the messages of the movie this time around. Pinocchio is all about choosing to do the right thing over the wrong thing even if it's easier or more fun. But here when Pinocchio is on his way, he runs into Honest John and Gideon again, only for him to reject their proposition of becoming famous, and he actually does listen to Jiminy and go to school. However, when he gets there, the teacher kicks him out and tells him that he belongs in a puppet show and not in school. So when Honest John and Gideon come back and tell him that they can take him to the puppet show master, can you really blame him for going with them? Here he isn't really given the choice. He was openly rejected. I think if they wanted to go this route, it would have made more sense if he did go to school, but had to deal with the typical annoyances of school life, like the material being boring or hard, and maybe he gets bullied by the other kids for being a puppet, instead of them literally kicking him out like that. Meanwhile, the temptation of joining the puppet show was always there. I also think that would have been more relatable to kids, since it kind of felt like they were trying to relate this to being an influencer on the internet. Honest John even says specifically that he can be an influencer if he goes and becomes famous in the puppet show. And a lot of kids today say they want to grow up to be an influencer instead of a different career, but instead they didn't really give him the option. So he goes to the puppet show and gets hired by Stromboli, only for him to turn out to be a bad guy who mistreats his workers, and he locks Pinocchio in a cage. In the original film, they had the Blue Fairy come and save him. He lies to her to try to cover up his wrongdoings, which causes his nose to grow, and she refuses to help him until he tells the truth and apologizes. So it's a good lesson for him. But here, Stromboli leaves the keys to the cage he's in across the room, so Pinocchio lies in order to get his nose to grow long enough so Jiminy can grab it. So in this case, lying worked out for him, and he didn't really need to lie to Jiminy to begin with. What happened wasn't his fault. He did listen to Geppetto and went to school like he was told, but it didn't work out because of circumstances beyond his control. I'm not sure why they didn't just bring back the Blue Fairy for this scene, because I feel like it sent mixed messages. Then he's trying to go home, only for him to get kidnapped by the coachman. He literally grabs him in a net. Then Luke Evans sings a song about peer pressure, since Pinocchio actually does bring up that he should probably go home. But everybody says Pleasure Island is awesome, but if it was really that cool, he should have just wanted to go on his own instead of having to be kidnapped by people. But he goes along with it anyway, only to be clearly uncomfortable by everything going on when he does get there. And he doesn't even go along with what they're doing. In the original, he does break things and indulge in alcohol and smoking, which in this version have been cut out, which I guess isn't surprising considering modern sensibilities, but it really waters down the scene. They make sure to comment that all the drinks are root beer and just have the kids break stuff, but it doesn't have the same effect. However, Pinocchio still gets punished by gaining donkey features, despite the fact that he doesn't really deserve it in this version. The whole point of this scene is that if you act like a jerk, you'll turn into one. The message isn't exactly subtle.
What's he think I look like? A jackass?
Sure do!
In the original, he ignores Jiminy's warnings and doesn't actually stop doing what he's doing until he notices that Lampwick is starting to change, but by that point it's too late for him too, and he suffers the consequences for it. But here he openly states that he doesn't agree with what's going on and that he doesn't want to be a jerk, so it seems like him starting to turn into a donkey is unjustified. Nothing about this version of Pleasure Island is as successful as the original. They even cut out Alexander, and that moment was pretty integral to really drive home what's going on here, that these children are being manipulated into turning turning into donkeys so the coachmen can make money off of them, and the kids lose their humanity and will probably die in the salt mines. I guess they didn't want to make it too scary for kids, but I can't help but feel like if they're not going to go all out, then why do it in the first place? Why have this watered down version when you can just watch the original? So they go home to reunite with Geppetto, but find that he's not there. They've added a few new characters, like a seagull named Sophia, and a puppeteer in Stromboli's show named Fabiana. I think the characters overall are fine, although Sophia's a bit grating, but I feel like neither of them really got enough screen time to establish themselves as characters, and they more or less just replaced the fairy, because for some reason they only had the blue fairy show up at the beginning, and then never again. So in the scenes where she previously did appear, she was replaced with these characters, like the seagull telling them about Monstro, and then instead of Pinocchio walking across the ocean floor, which was actually a really cool scene, she just water skis them to Geppetto, which is way less interesting. Then when they escape Monstro, Pinocchio basically has superpowers now? He's able to speed away from Monstro, who has tentacles now. In my opinion, he's a bit over-designed. Pinocchio is a good swimmer, but he doesn't have super speed. Lastly, they changed the ending of the story, where they only imply that he turns into a real boy, but Jiminy specifies that no one really knows for sure what happened, which doesn't really make sense and also contradicts what Jiminy said at the beginning of the movie, where he tells us that he is narrating after the fact, so he should know what happened. But instead of Pinocchio almost dying, Geppetto almost dies, and then Pinocchio cries, and I guess the blue fairy gave him some magic because his tears revived Geppetto, which is more Rapunzel than Pinocchio. Then Geppetto says that he's always been a real boy in his heart and that's what matters, and then they go home together. And that's when Jiminy says he may or may not have turned into a real boy, although the visuals imply that he does. I'm just not sure why they made this change. What's the point of it? Pinocchio has such an iconic ending, why mess with it? Overall, this is another unnecessary remake that ultimately doesn't live up to the original, and in some cases even undermines the messages. It's almost like the writers just didn't get Pinocchio. The movie has other problems too, like the pacing is an issue. Monstro felt really rushed, while some of the jokes lingered too long. There's one joke where Pinocchio stops to smell manure in the middle of the road? Why is this here? The film is also very talk heavy, and it could have used that screen time more productively. This just really missed the mark. I definitely prefer if Disney just put more energy and resources into original properties, but that's my opinion. What do you guys think? How do you feel about these live action remakes? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching, everyone. I really appreciate it. Before I go, I want to give a shout out to our channel's members: Stutania, Tyrant Carnivore, Adam K, Shiny Orc Boy, The Rabbit Mancer, General Bolivar, Depth Charge Media, Samaru163, Gabby Hime, Sandy Martin, Verdant Range, Butcher7 Actual, Dash Hound, JVR, Hussyman42, Nixel, Eric Griffin, Phil C, Taylor Ramirez, Caleb Nelson, Bandito Bane, Hunter Rose, Dakari the Professor, Equestron, and Owen Wildish. Thank you all so much for your support. If you'd like to become a member, you can hit the join button next to the subscribe button. We also have a buy me coffee if you want to support us that way. But if you enjoyed this video, you can leave a like and subscribe to the channel, which helps us out a lot too, and it's free. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye for now.